Hello and welcome back to Two Dark Dozes. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy dark doses of horror that hit you twice as hard, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable. Dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away, and let's begin. Story one, the first time I saw him, was after my dad's birthday party. I was only 5 years old then, too young to understand how fast a normal day could turn into the worst memory of your life. I remember the party more clearly than I remember many things from that age. The house was full of people, laughter, food, music, and bright voices. My dad's friends had come over, and everyone seemed happy. I was wearing my new yellow dress, the one my mom had bought for me a few days earlier. It was bright and sunny, and I felt beautiful in it. At 5 years old, I thought I was the most important person in the room. Maybe I was, for a little while. Nearly everyone stopped to look at me, smile at me, touch my hair, or tell me how pretty I looked. I loved the attention, and I kept spinning in the middle of the living room just to see the skirt of my dress move around me. My mom was busy the whole evening. She moved from guest to guest, making sure everyone had enough food and a full glass. Every time my dad tried to help, she pushed him away with a laugh and told him to enjoy his own birthday. Dad was usually a quiet man. He was not the kind of person who needed to be the loudest in the room, but there were two things that always made him light up. One was his family. The other was music. More than anything, he loved the Killers. He had their whole collection on vinyl, and he treated those records like treasure. Some of my warmest memories from that time were of him lifting me into his arms, holding me tight, and singing along while the records played. I did not understand the songs then, not really, but I understood the happiness in his voice. That night, one of his favorite records was playing during the party. Everyone had started sitting down to eat when the music began. Plates were being passed around. People were still talking and laughing. I was sitting right next to my dad at the table. There was tomato soup in front of him, fresh and hot, thick and red orange in the bowl. I remember looking down at my own food, then looking up at him because I thought he was going to say something funny. Instead, he grabbed his chest. At first, I did not understand. His face changed in a way I had never seen before. His eyes widened. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Then, he dropped forward into the soup. Everything happened at once after that. Someone screamed. Chairs scraped across the floor. My mom shouted his name. People rushed toward him. Someone knocked into the record player and the song began to skip. A short part, repeated again and again, asking the same painful question over and over. Like the music itself could not understand what had just happened. I sat there, frozen. Tomato soup had splashed onto my yellow dress. It was on my hands, my arms, and the front of my clothes. The bright dress was now stained with thick red and orange liquid. My father was lying motionless in front of me, his face turned into the bowl, while adults shouted and pushed around me. I did not understand heart attacks. I did not understand death. I only understood that my dad had been laughing a moment before, and now he was not moving. Later, I learned that it was a massive and sudden heart attack. There was nothing anyone could have done. People said that like it was supposed to help. It never did. That night, after the ambulance, after the police, after the guests had left in quiet shock, I was sitting alone in my bedroom. My yellow dress was still on me. My mom had tried to get me to change, but I would not let her. I sat on my bed, staring down at the stained fabric, touching the dry, crusted soup with my fingers. It no longer looked sunny. It looked ruined. I felt ruined, too, though I did not have words for that feeling yet. Then, Something moved in the corner of my eye. I looked toward my dresser mirror. At first, I thought it was just a shadow. My room was dim, and the light from the hallway barely reached inside. But the shape in the mirror was too solid to be a normal shadow. It stood in the corner of the reflected room, tall and black, almost like a human shape cut out of the world. It had no real face, no skin, no clothes, no details. It looked like a place where light disappeared. But two things stood out clearly: a huge white smile and two small, shiny black eyes. The smile looked wrong. It was too wide, too bright, and too cartoon-like for something so dark. The teeth were large and pearl white, floating in the blackness. The eyes were tiny compared to the mouth, but they shone like wet beads. They were looking at me. My heart jumped into my throat. I spun around so fast I almost fell off the bed. There was nothing behind me. The corner of my room was empty. For a few seconds, I could only breathe in short, scared gasps. Slowly, I turned back toward the mirror. The shadow was now sitting next to me on the bed. Not in the corner. Not far away. Right beside me in the reflection. It towered over my tiny body, leaning down as if it wanted to look straight into my eyes. That wide white grin hung in the darkness. The black eyes stared. I screamed louder than I had ever screamed in my life, jumped from the bed, and ran out of the room. My mom spent the rest of that terrible night trying to calm me down. I cried until my throat hurt. I told her there was a black monster with funny teeth in my room. I told her it was in the mirror. I told her it was sitting next to me. But she did not really listen. I do not blame her now. She had just lost her husband in front of a room full of people. She had watched the man she loved die at his own birthday party. And, as I would learn later, she had another secret that made that night even harder. She was pregnant. She had planned to tell my dad after the party. She had no room in her mind for monsters. Over time, the night of my father's death became a memory covered in fog. Some parts stayed sharp, like the soup on my dress, the sound of the record skipping, and my mother's scream. Other parts became blurry. The dark figure from the mirror became something strange in my mind. Too impossible to be real, but too real to be forgotten. I never told anyone else about it, not even when I got older. But because that song had been playing when Dad died, and because that same music had become tied forever to that night, I gave the figure a name in my head. I called him Mr. Brightside, only to myself, of course. The next time I saw him, I was 13. By then, my little brother Jimmy was 7. He was the secret my mom had been carrying the night Dad died. I should say I loved him from the start, and I did in the way sisters love younger brothers, but I was also a typical older sister. Most days I could not stand him. He was loud, messy, full of questions, and always moving. He never stopped talking. He would ask me something, then answer himself, then change the subject before I could even speak. Worst of all, he insisted on calling me Reg. My name is Regina. I hated being called Reg. I told him that hundreds of times, but he never listened. Looking back, it all feels so small, so harmless. At the time, it felt unbearable. I was 13, full of teenage anger, and convinced that every small annoyance was a personal attack. One afternoon, Jimmy and I were on the bus home. It was a nice day, warm and bright. He was actually bothering me less than usual, which made me suspicious. We climbed onto the bus, and he immediately jumped over the aisle seat. "Reg, let me sit by the window, okay?" he asked. "Whatever," I said, rolling my eyes as I sat beside him. He pressed his face close to the glass and started talking. He told me about a boy named Henny, who was going to an amusement park with another friend. He said they had not invited him, but he did not care, because the amusement park was boring anyway. Then he said Henny thought it was scary, but Jimmy did not think so. except for the clown near the roller coaster who checked tickets. He said clowns were not funny. Then he said my name again. "Hey, Reg." I had already put my earphones in. "Sure," I muttered, though I was barely listening. That was how Jimmy talked. His stories had no beginning and no end. They just wandered from one thought to the next. I knew the window would eventually catch his attention, and then he would be quiet for the rest of the ride. I just wanted to scroll on my phone and be left alone. "Reg." I ignored him. "Reg." My face tightened. I stared harder at my phone, pretending I could not hear him. I hoped he would get bored and stop. He did not. When I finally looked up, ready to tell him to be quiet, I saw what he was staring at. On the far side of the road, there had been a huge accident. Several cars were smashed together in a pile. Smoke rose from crumpled metal. One vehicle had fire licking from the front. People were standing in the road, screaming, waving their arms, trying to help or trying to understand what had happened. It was the kind of thing you see on the evening news and feel sad about from a safe distance. But we were not at a safe distance. We were right there, rolling past it slowly in the bus. My mouth fell open. Jimmy started to sniffle. Without thinking, I wrapped my arms around him and pulled him against me. I turned his face away from the window and held him there so he would not have to see more. For once, he did not fight me. He just shook in my arms. I held him for the rest of the ride, and neither of us said anything. When we got home, he was still trembling, so I brought him up to my room. I sat him on my bed, and that was when he broke down completely. He cried into my shoulder, his small body shaking with each sob. The accident had been too much for him. It had been too much for me, too, but I did not let myself cry then. I just held him and rubbed his back until the sobbing became softer, then slower, and finally stopped. When I heard him snore, I carefully moved away from him and went into the bathroom. I looked in the mirror and realized I had been crying after all. I had only just started wearing makeup, and it had run down my face in dark lines. My cheeks were wet, my eyes were red, my mouth looked twisted, like I was trying to smile through a mask. For a strange second, I thought I looked like a clown, and Jimmy's words from the bus came back to me. Then a dark feeling fell over me. It was sudden and heavy. The bathroom seemed colder. The air became thick. In my mind, I heard that old song again, not clearly, but like a memory stuck on repeat. The same little parts skipping over and over. My stomach turned. I felt 5 years old again, sitting in a stained yellow dress, staring at my dead father. That was when I noticed the light from my bedroom was gone. The bathroom door was open behind me, and normally I could see the warm light from my room in the mirror. Now it was blocked by something tall and dark. I did not need to turn around to know what it was. Mr. Brightside had returned. I froze. My hands gripped the sink. In the mirror, I watched him stoop lower so his head could fit beneath the doorframe. One small black eye looked at me first, then the other. His huge white grin shone in the darkness. He moved stiffly, like a puppet being pulled by strings. He bent under the frame and began to come toward me. I could not move. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped. I watched him in the mirror, shaking so badly that my knees almost gave out. I was sure he was going to kill me. I was sure that whatever he had come for when I was 5, he had finally returned to take. Then a small voice spoke behind me. "Reg?" I blinked. It felt like the blink lasted forever. When my eyes opened again, the shadow was gone. Jimmy stood behind me, rubbing his red eyes. He looked scared and confused. My body suddenly came back to life. I turned and rushed toward him, grabbing his arms. "Jim, are you okay?" I asked. For a moment, I almost forgot about the thing in the mirror. Jimmy looked past me toward the bathroom. "Reg," he whispered, "why was there a man in your bathroom?" After that, I saw Mr. Brightside many more times. And not just me. Jimmy saw him too. He appeared when our grandmother died. He appeared when our old family dog passed away. He appeared after my first boyfriend broke up with me, which felt stupid at the time because a breakup was nothing compared to death, but there he was anyway. He was not tied to mirrors like I had once believed. I saw him in windows, in dark corners, across the street, on rooftops, and once sitting on the other side of a bus, facing me with that terrible grin. He never spoke. He only watched. At first, he stayed far away. Then, over the years, he started getting closer. Every time I was sad, scared, hurt, embarrassed, or lonely, I would catch a glimpse of him. Sometimes he appeared only in the corner of my vision. Sometimes he stood fully in view. His presence made every bad feeling worse because it made me afraid of feeling anything at all. I started to fear sadness itself. I feared grief. I feared anger. I even feared happiness, because happiness could fall apart, and when it did, he would be waiting. So I tried to make myself empty. I tried to become calm and flat and robotic. I thought that if I did not rise too high, I would never fall too low. If I did not love anything too much, maybe I would not hurt too much when it was gone. That was my plan. It did not work as well as I wanted, but I tried. Jimmy and I kept the secret together. In a strange way, Mr. Brightside made us closer. We never told Mom. We never told friends. We never told teachers. But between us, we talked about him. We made a private digital diary where we recorded every sighting. Where we saw him. What time it happened. How close he got. What we were feeling before he appeared. It sounds almost exciting when I write it like that, like we were hunting a ghost or solving a mystery. It was not exciting. It was survival. Things stayed that way until I was 18. I was at a house party after a horrible week. School had been stressful. Friends were being difficult, and I had been feeling trapped in my own head. I had not seen Mr. Brightside in a while, though, so the stress felt almost normal. Normal human stress. That was a relief. For a while, I actually had fun. The house was crowded, hot, and loud. People were dancing. Someone had set up speakers in the living room. I remember laughing with a girl from one of my classes and thinking maybe I was finally becoming normal. Maybe I could have a bad week and then go to a party and dance like everyone else. Then the DJ played that song. The moment I heard the opening music, my whole body went cold. My mood collapsed instantly. I knew he was coming. I knew my night was over. It felt unfair in a way that made me angry. I just wanted one night. One normal night. I wanted to relax after a terrible week without my ghostly stalker ruining everything. I started breathing too fast. My eyes darted around the room. People were dancing and laughing, unaware that my world had just cracked open. Then I saw him. He was standing behind the DJ. The DJ had no idea. He kept moving to the music, smiling, completely blind to the tall black figure behind him. Mr. Brightside's teeth shone above the crowd. He was taller than everyone there, his head and grin rising above them like a nightmare floating over the room. Then he started moving toward me. He passed straight through the crowd. People did not notice. They did not move out of his way. He slipped through them like smoke through water, never taking his eyes off me. I ran. I did not care who saw. I did not care if people thought I was drunk, dramatic, or insane. I pushed through bodies, rushed out the front door, and sprinted into the street. A car hit me. The driver had not expected me to run into the road, and I had not expected the car to be there. There was a scream of brakes, a flash of headlights, and then pain. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. The car had crushed my leg badly. The doctors said I would walk again, but it would take time, surgery, and a lot of rehabilitation. My mom and Jimmy stayed with me the first night. Mom tried to stay strong, but I could see how scared she was. Jimmy barely said anything. He just sat close to my bed, watching the corners of the room. Eventually, Mom said they had to leave. It was already around 2 a.m., and Jimmy had school in the morning. He tried to argue, but Mom shut it down quickly. Before leaving, he looked at me in a way only he could. A look that said he understood what I was afraid of. "Stay safe, Reg," he said. Then Mom let him out. Almost as soon as they were gone, Mr. Brightside appeared. He stood in the corner of the hospital room, near the door. Nurses came in and out, checking machines, adjusting things, asking if I needed water. None of them looked at him. None of them saw him. He stood perfectly still, smiling at me from the dark corner. This time, he did not come closer, but I could not take it anymore. Something inside me snapped. I was in pain. I was exhausted. I was tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of this thing appearing every time my life hurt. For the first time, I spoke to him. I screamed. I screamed at him until my throat burned. I told him to leave me alone. I told him I hated him. I asked what he wanted from me. I cursed him, cried, and screamed again. He did not move. He did not answer. He only stood there with that awful grin while I poured years of fear into the room. When I finally stopped, he slowly slipped away into the darkness. The nurses rushed in and found me hysterical. They gave me medicine to calm me down. When I woke the next morning, he was gone. After that, I still saw hints of him sometimes. When I was upset, I might catch a shadow out of the corner of my eye. I might feel that cold pressure in a room. I might think I saw white teeth in a dark window. But he never came fully into view again, not for years. Eventually, even Jimmy said he had stopped seeing him. I thought I had won. I thought I had scared away the monster. I had no idea how wrong I was. A few more years passed. I built a life around the scar he had left in me. I did not look over my shoulder every time I felt sad anymore, but I still felt sick whenever someone mentioned that song. Even hearing the band's name made my stomach tighten. Still, I was better than before. I had a job, friends, an apartment, and a limp that reminded me of the accident every day. Jimmy grew up too. He became funny in a calmer way, though he still called me Reg because he knew I hated it, and because he knew I secretly loved hearing it from him. I was 25 when my mom called me one ordinary morning. At first, I could not understand her. She was crying too hard. Every word came out broken by sobs. I kept asking her to slow down, to breathe, to tell me what happened. Finally, she managed to say one word. Jimmy. He had been walking to a convenience store around 11 p.m. when someone ran a red light. It was a hit and run. The road had been almost empty. No one got to him in time. He was dead before an ambulance could help. I do not remember much after that call. I remember dropping to the floor. I remember making sounds that did not feel human. I remember thinking that it was a sick joke. We had both been hit by cars, but I survived with a limp, and he lost his life. Why? Why did I get to walk again while he did not even get to breathe? He had done nothing wrong. He had just been walking. My little brother, who had once cried in my arms on the bus, who had seen the same monster I had, who had warned me to stay safe. That night, I was alone in my apartment, sobbing into my pillow. I felt broken beyond repair. I loved Jimmy more than I had ever understood while he was alive. The guilt was unbearable. I kept thinking of all the times I had rolled my eyes at him, All the times I had told him to shut up. All the times I had acted like his voice annoyed me, when really it had been one of the safest sounds in my world. Then I saw something in the dresser mirror. A dark shape, a white grin, black eyes. Mr. Brightside was back. My crying stopped instantly. For a second, I wanted to run just like I had before. I wanted to throw myself into the street again and let another car finish what the first had failed to do. I wanted the nightmare to end. I wanted to go wherever Jimmy had gone. But I did not run. I turned around. He stood in the corner of my room, quiet and still, like an unwanted guest, too nervous to speak. I clenched my fists. My teeth pressed together so hard my jaw hurt. I was not a child anymore. I was not 13. I was not 18. I had lost too much to be scared of a shadow with a smile. I wanted to attack him. Then I noticed something strange. He looked small. Not just less frightening, actually small. All the times before, Mr. Brightside had towered over rooms like a dark grandfather clock, tall and impossible, and heavy with dread. But now he was shorter than me. His shoulders looked narrow. His shape seemed weaker. Even his grin looked different. It was still wide and white, but not as wide as before. His eyes looked larger, softer, and more confused. This was not the same face that had haunted me all those years. My anger faded. I stared at him. He stared back. Then he opened his mouth. The movement looked painful, like his face was not made for speaking. A horrible sound scraped out of him, harsh and broken, like nails dragged across a chalkboard. He tried again, then again. Short, ugly bursts. At first, I could not understand. Then the sound became clear enough for my heart to stop. He was saying my name, not my full name, my nickname. R-Reg, my whole body went cold. The word came out of me in a whisper. Jimmy? He nodded. There was no doubt after that. My brother was standing in front of me, but in a form I could barely understand. He was not alive, not the way he had been. But he was there. My Jimmy, my little brother. The boy who had seen the monster with me had somehow become something like it. Come here, Jimmy, I whispered. He moved toward me slowly. His steps were stiff and uneven, like he was learning how to walk with a body that did not belong to him. He trembled with each movement. I reached out and grabbed his arms to help him. They felt strange, not like normal arms, but solid enough for me to hold. He leaned on me, and I helped him to the bed. We sat together for hours. I talked. He listened. He tried to speak a few times, but all he could make were small broken croaks that seemed to hurt him. I told him it was okay. He did not need to talk. I told him I loved him. I told him I was sorry for being mean when we were kids. I told him I missed him already. I told him I did not know what was happening, but I was grateful he had come. He stayed until near morning. Then, suddenly, he was gone. I blinked, and the space beside me was empty. The next few days were strange. I was still grieving. I was still sad in a way that made everything feel heavy. But the sharpest edge of despair had changed. I had seen Jimmy. It made me happy and miserable at the same time. Happy because he was not fully gone. Miserable because I did not know what had happened to him, and because seeing him in that broken shape hurt almost as much as losing him. About a week later, I was lying in bed around 3 a.m., unable to sleep. Mr. Brightside was all I could think about. If Jimmy could appear like that, then what did that mean? And more importantly, who had Mr. Brightside really been all those years? The answer had been waiting in front of me since I was 5, but I had been too afraid to see it. I got out of bed, I grabbed my phone and opened my music app. My hands shook as I searched for the song. I paced around the room, arguing with myself. Maybe he would not come. Maybe I had scared him away years ago. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe grief had finally broken something inside me. But I knew the truth. I hit play. As soon as the opening melody began, a shiver moved from the top of my spine all the way down to my toes. I looked around the room. Nothing. I ran to the dresser mirror and stared into it, searching every corner in the reflection. There was no shadow, no white grin, no black eyes. Before I could stop myself, one word left my mouth. Dad? And then he was there. He stood so close behind me that I could have reached out and touched him. His dark shape towered over me, just as frightening as before, but this time I did not feel afraid. For the first time, I understood. He had not been following me because he wanted to hurt me. He had been there because pain called him. Grief opened the door. Fear brought him close. He had been there after every loss, every heartbreak, every moment when I felt alone. He had been trying to stay near me. My father, trapped in that terrible shape, had been watching over me the only way he could. I turned up the song. Then I turned around and hugged him. His body felt wrong and strange, but I held him anyway. I cried into the darkness where his chest should have been, and for once, the tears did not feel like something to fear. They felt like a bridge. They brought him to me. They brought Jimmy to me. They made the empty room feel full again. Now, things are different. I still grieve. I still hurt. I still miss them every day. But I am not afraid of sadness the way I used to be. I do not try to turn myself into a robot anymore. I do not fear every fall after happiness. I let myself feel things now, even the painful things. Because when the sadness comes, I know I will not be alone. Sometimes, in the corner of a room, I see a tall, dark shape with a wide, white smile. Sometimes, beside him, I see a smaller one, still awkward, still quiet, still learning how to exist in whatever place this is between life and death. They do not speak much. Jimmy cannot. Dad never does. But they listen. And when that old song plays, the one I once hated more than anything, I no longer run. I sit still. I let the memories come. And I wait for my family to come home. Story 2. The headline on the television said, Carolina woman goes missing. I saw it from my seat in the lobby of the car detailing center, sitting there with my hands folded and my eyes half on the screen, half on the hallway that led to the garage area. My Honda was in the back, getting the kind of deep cleaning I should have paid for weeks ago. The television was mounted high on the wall, playing the local news with the volume low, but the headline was large enough for me to read without trying. A woman had gone missing. That would have been sad, but easy to forget if it had been the only one. The problem was that it was the second story like that I had seen in the same week. The first person had disappeared from a town about an hour away from me. This woman had gone missing barely 20 minutes away. Around here, that kind of thing did not happen often enough to ignore. I pulled out my phone and started searching for more information. I expected there to be some detail, some rumor, some hint that would explain it. Maybe a boyfriend. Maybe a fight. Maybe a car found near a back road. Maybe something about drugs or an accident or a person seen leaving town. But there was nothing useful. No answers, no leads, no clear reason. These people had just vanished. That bothered me more than I wanted it to. I lived in a rural area, the kind of place made up of back roads, woods, old houses, churches, and fields that seemed to stretch forever. We did not have much in the way of big businesses. There was a Dollar General, a few family-owned restaurants, a Walmart, and not a whole lot else. In a bigger city, missing person alerts became something people sadly got used to. You saw them often enough that your mind protected itself by looking away. But here, people noticed. Here, when someone disappeared, it felt closer. The thought stayed with me until the clerk called my name. He was holding my keys in the air, letting me know my car was ready. I paid, thanked him, and walked outside. The inside of my car smelled strongly of citrus now. It was almost too much, but it was still better than the rotten, sour smell that had been trapped in there before. For a couple of weeks, the inside of my sedan had smelled like spoiled meat mixed with something wet and old. I had tried to clean it myself at first. I scrubbed, sprayed, wiped, and aired it out, but nothing really worked. I could not bring it in like that right away. People would have looked at me strangely, and maybe they would have refused to work on it. I could not blame them. But I had a date tonight, so I finally stopped being stubborn and brought it in. When I opened the driver's door, I checked the back seat area. The smell was better, but the floor behind the front seats still had dark stains. They looked like small oil spills, black and brown against the carpet. The workers had told me they did the best they could, but some stains were too deep to remove fully. I guess those were the ones they meant. My date could not see that. I had been talking to this girl for a while, and I liked her. I really liked her. I did not want her first impression of my car to be that I was dirty or careless. So I decided to stop by the store and buy floor mats before picking her up. I found a set that fit well enough and placed them carefully over the stained areas. After that, the car looked normal. Clean, even. The rest of the afternoon was busy. I went home and cleaned my apartment, even though it was already mostly fine. I did laundry, fed my dogs, checked their water, took out the trash, and then stood in front of my closet trying to find something decent to wear. I had not been on a real date in a long time, and I had forgotten how little of my wardrobe was actually good for one. Most of my clothes were work shirts, old jeans, and things I wore around the house. After way too much searching, I chose a black polo shirt and a pair of jeans that were a little tight but made me look better than usual. At least, that was what I told myself. I was brushing my teeth when I heard whining from the back room. I knew it was the dogs. At first, I rolled my eyes and kept brushing. They had been fed. They had water. They were fine. Sometimes they just worked themselves up over nothing, especially if they knew I was leaving. But the whining did not stop. It went on, soft at first, then higher and more nervous. It became the kind of sound that makes you wonder whether something is actually wrong. Before putting on my jacket, I walked down the hallway and went to check on them. As I reached the bedroom door, their whining became quieter. By the time I opened it, the sound had completely stopped. All three dogs were staring at me. They were shaking. Their ears were low, their bodies stiff, and their eyes looked wild. They were not acting guilty, like dogs who had chewed something they should not have. They looked scared, more scared than I had ever seen them. "You guys need to calm down," I said in my firmest voice. "Dad's going to be gone for a while. I'll be back later, and I better not get another call from the neighbor because you decided to howl at nothing." I looked from one dog to the next, trying to sound in control. "If you want treats later, you need to be good." Some of them would not meet my eyes, but they stopped making noise. That was enough for me. I closed the door and left the apartment with only the hum of the air conditioner behind me. I picked Kelsey up at her sister's house. From the moment she opened the door, the night felt easy. We hugged, and there was none of that awkward tension I had been afraid of. She smiled like she was actually happy to see me. She looked even better in person than she had in pictures, and she had this way of making conversation feel natural. We talked in the car like we had known each other longer than we had. Dinner went well. Better than well. It was the kind of first date people pretend to have in movies. There were no uncomfortable pauses, no forced jokes, no moments where either of us checked our phone because we had run out of things to say. Our interests matched in ways that almost felt too perfect. She liked the same old music I liked. She had strong opinions about bad horror movies. She loved dogs. She laughed at my jokes even when they were not that good. After dinner, we walked through a courtyard near the restaurant. There was live music playing somewhere across the open space, soft enough to be background sound, but clear enough to make the night feel romantic. Families and children stood around a large fountain, tossing coins into the water, even though signs asked them not to. I had never seen a fountain that people did not treat like a wishing well. This fountain was different from most I had seen. It was not pretty in the usual way. There were no angels, no birds, no peaceful figures pouring water from jars. In the center of it was a large stone sculpture of Cerberus, the three-headed dog from Greek mythology. Each head snarled in a different direction, mouths open, teeth bared. Above the three heads, a thin figure stood or floated near their jaws. I was not a mythology expert, but even I understood enough to know the image was not meant to feel sweet. It was strange, maybe even ugly, but it suited the night in a way I could not explain. Kelsey and I sat on a bench nearby. We talked about work, our dreams, things we were embarrassed to enjoy, and eventually, our dogs. Speaking of dogs, I said, leaning back a little, I should probably head home at some point soon. I did not want to say it, but I knew I had to. I don't want them getting too restless and destroying something. Kelsey moved a little closer to me. Her thigh was almost touching mine. I felt nervous, but in a good way. It was that warm, fluttering feeling in your chest when you think, maybe, just maybe, you have found someone special, and all you have to do is not mess it up. Are you sure it's just about checking on your three dogs? She asked, smiling over her drink. Or are you bored of me already? She said it playfully, but I still wanted to answer right. I stretched my arms upward, pretending to relax, and then let my right arm come down around her shoulders. I was not even trying to be sneaky. I wanted to kiss her, and I wanted her to know I wanted to kiss her. I am definitely not bored, I said. To be honest, I get more interested in you every minute. She turned to look at me. I turned to her. I had not kissed a woman in years. That thought hit me at the worst possible time. I hoped I would not be bad at it. I hoped I would not make it awkward. I hoped I would not ruin what had been, so far, a perfect night. Our faces moved closer. Then, her purse vibrated. The moment broke. I'm sorry, she said, pulling back with an embarrassed little smile. I may need to get that. It could be my sister. No worries, I said, though I was absolutely full of worries. Not bad ones. Just the kind that come when you are sitting next to someone you badly want to kiss, and the universe suddenly decides to interrupt. She dug through her purse and answered the call. Her expression changed almost right away. Oh, she said. She listened for a few seconds, her eyebrows drawing together. Yes, I'll be there as soon as I can. She ended the call and slipped the phone into her coat pocket. It looks like we do have to call it a night, she said. That was my sister. She said, something is going on with my mom at the house, and she needs my help. I stood with her, trying not to show how disappointed I was. I had such a nice time tonight, she said. Can we do this again? Soon? Of course, I said quickly. I'd love to see you again. The drive back to her sister's house was still pleasant. We talked about our next date, and she seemed genuinely surprised when I told her I had only ever been to one concert in my life. By the time we pulled into the driveway, I had almost forgotten the interrupted kiss. Almost, she told me again that she had fun and could not wait to do it again. Then she leaned over and kissed me on the cheek before getting out of the car. I walked her halfway down the sidewalk. It was a weak attempt at being gentlemanly, but she seemed to appreciate it. She smiled before heading to the front door. As I walked back to my car, something felt wrong. A cold feeling touched my spine. It was not a breeze. It was sharper than that, like someone had pressed a piece of ice against my back from the inside. I stopped for a second, confused. The whole night had been warm, easy, and light. But now, something had shifted. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe it was just nerves. Maybe it was the disappointment of not getting the kiss. Maybe I was overthinking because I liked her. Kelsey unlocked the door and went inside. That was when I noticed the house. There were no lights on. Not one. No porch light. No living room lamp. No television glow. No kitchen light. Nothing. If 3 people lived there, and it was only about 9:30 at night, something should have been on. A normal house at that hour has some sign of life, even a candle in a window. But the place looked dead. I started the car and looked back one more time. Still dark. I told myself to stop being stupid. This is what happened when I liked someone. I started looking for problems that were not there. I pulled away, thinking about how dumb I probably looked. I had opened the door for her when I picked her up, but I had not opened it when I dropped her off. I should have moved faster. I should have kissed her sooner. I should have said something better. I'm an idiot, I muttered under my breath. I had driven past a couple of houses, but I could still see Kelsey's driveway behind me. I glanced in the rearview mirror, hoping she really meant it when she said she wanted another date. Then I saw someone standing in the driveway, motionless, watching me. It looked like Kelsey, but the night covered too much of her face for me to be sure. I tapped the brake so my taillights would throw red light behind the car. For 1 second, her shape became clearer. It was her. She was standing stiffly in the driveway, not smiling, not waving, not looking like the woman I had spent the night with. Her body was rigid. Her face looked empty. The red light washed over her, vanished when I took my foot off the brake, then returned when I pressed it again. I kept rolling slowly forward. The next time I hit the brakes, she was closer, much closer. My stomach tightened. She was moving toward the car, not walking normally. Her movements were sharp and aggressive, almost animal-like. The distance between us disappeared too fast. She was not just following me. She was gaining on me. What the foo? I did not finish. I slammed my foot on the gas. The car shot forward. I ran through stop signs, barely checking for traffic or police. I just wanted distance. She did not know where I lived, I reminded myself. Thank God I had not told her. Thank God I had been careful about that. Still, I watched the rearview mirror the entire way home. I took turns I did not need to take. I drove down roads that made no sense. I circled around and added extra time to the trip just to make sure nobody was following me. By the time I reached my apartment complex, my heart was still pounding. I parked, but did not get out right away. I sat in the car, looking around the parking lot, checking the shadows between vehicles, the stairwells, the corners of the building. Nothing moved. Finally, I opened the door and stepped out. I reached to tuck my keys into my pocket. Then something hit me. Or maybe someone did. My body folded forward, and I fell face first toward the concrete. Everything went black. When I woke up, I was on smooth cement. For a few seconds, I could not think. My head throbbed, and my mouth tasted bitter. A single bare light bulb hung above me, swinging slightly. The walls were wooden. The space was small. I was in a shed. A fucking shed. I sat up too quickly and nearly fell over. As my eyes adjusted, I realized I was not alone. 2 other people were inside with me. One was a woman sitting against the wall with her knees pulled close to her chest. The other was a man on the opposite side, hunched over and staring at his shoes. Both of them looked exhausted and scared, but when they saw me move, they looked almost annoyed, like I had arrived late to a meeting nobody wanted to attend. I tried to stand, but dizziness rolled through me. "Save your energy," the woman said flatly. "There's no way out," the man added. That only made me push harder. I got to my feet, unsteady but upright, and saw the door. It was right there. Plain, obvious, close enough to touch. I rushed at it and grabbed the handle. It did not move. I pulled. I kicked. I slammed my shoulder into it. Nothing happened. I backed up as much as the small space allowed and ran into it with all my weight. Still nothing. "You're wasting your time," the woman said as I threw myself into the door again. "I have to try," I snapped. I was breathing hard now. Pain spread through my shoulder. "Maybe you two could help instead of just sitting there." The man looked up at me, irritated. "You don't think we tried?" Michelle and I did the same thing. That door is reinforced somehow. "Michelle," I looked at the woman again. Something about her face tugged at my memory. I knew I had seen her somewhere. Not in person. Somewhere else. "Wait," I said slowly. "I've seen you." Then it hit me. Her face had been on the news. She was the missing woman. The headline from the car detailing center came back to me. "Carolina woman goes missing." She was that woman. Which meant the man must have been the other missing person from earlier in the week. And if I was in here with them, then the conclusion was obvious. I was missing now, too. The thought settled over me like a heavy blanket. Somewhere, maybe soon, my face would be on the news. People would talk about how strange it was. They would say I had vanished. My dogs would be alone in my apartment, whining at the bedroom door. My car would be in the parking lot. Someone might eventually find it. Maybe not. "I'm rich," the man said after a while. He did not look at me when he said it. He was busy playing with his shoelaces, untying them and tying them again in different knots. I watched him for a second, irritated by how uneven the loops were. Then forced myself to look away. "Why us?" I asked. Neither of them answered. It was probably the question every kidnapped person asked at some point. Why me? Why this place? Why now? But there was never a good answer. Not one that helped. "Have you seen who put us here?" I asked. Rich and Michelle looked at each other, then back at me. "No," Rich said. "The only time we see or hear anything is when someone opens that slot and throws in food and water." He nodded toward the door. I looked and finally saw it. There was a narrow slot in the middle, hard to notice unless you knew it was there. It was wide enough for a hand, maybe a small tray. The hopelessness of the situation pressed against my chest. Had they really just given up? Was there no plan? No weapon? No weak spot? I wanted to scream. Before I could say anything else, the door moved. Not a little. It opened. The heavy slab pulled away from the frame and swung outward, revealing the world beyond the shed. Michelle and Rich froze. Their eyes widened, and neither of them spoke. For a moment, none of us moved. It felt too easy. It had to be a trap, but none of us were going to stay inside. We stepped out carefully. Outside was a grassy field that seemed to go on forever. Low hills rolled under a darkening sky. The sun was almost gone, sinking behind the distance. There were no buildings, no roads, no power lines, no sign of where we were. Just field, sky, and the small shed behind us. The freedom did not feel like freedom. It felt staged. "Think there's a sniper watching us?" Rich muttered as he walked around the back of the shed, probably looking for a tool or anything he could use as a weapon. "If they wanted to kill us like that, they already would have," Michelle said. She stared at the fading daylight. "It's going to be dark soon," she added. "Maybe 30 minutes. We should pick a direction and go." That was the only smart idea anyone had. None of us wanted to split up, so we began walking together through the field. After what felt like an hour, we saw something in the distance. At first it was only a dark shape. Then we heard a low hum, like static from an old machine. "You see that?" Rich asked. We moved closer. It was a giant television. It was sitting on top of stacked hay bales in the middle of the field. The three of us stared at it, confused and frightened. It made no sense. Nothing did. The screen was dark, but the hum grew louder as we approached. "What the hell is?" Before I could finish, the humming stopped, and the screen flashed on. A grainy video appeared. It looked like it had been filmed inside an old barn. The camera angle was low, but high enough to show what was happening. At first, I saw small shapes moving around. Puppies, 4 newborn puppies, tiny and helpless, too young to be away from their mother. They stumbled over each other, sniffing and crawling clumsily across the floor. A shadow moved over them. A person stepped into view wearing a hood. The face was mostly hidden. My stomach tightened because I knew what kind of video this was before anything happened. I had seen enough things online to understand the direction it was going. Rich's face changed beside me. A deep, sick disappointment spread across it. The puppies kept moving, unaware. Then a sledgehammer appeared at the edge of the frame. It hovered there. The person lifted it. The screen went red. I looked away, but the sound stayed with me. I did not need to see the person's face to know something about Rich. The way he looked at the screen said enough. The video changed. A high-pitched humming of "row, row, row your boat" played through the speakers. This time, the person on screen was not hiding much. A yellow bandana covered the lower half of the face, but the rest was clear enough. Michelle turned away behind me. "I can't believe this," she muttered. "What the fuck?" The video showed a bathroom in a modern home. Michelle was there. The bath was running. She slid a pet crate into view and opened the small door. A thin, frightened cat looked out from inside. I did not need to watch the rest. The splashing sounds, the slowing movement, and Michelle's laughter on the recording told the whole story. The Michelle standing near me looked sick and furious at the same time. Rich would not look at her. Neither of them could look at each other for more than a second. I took a few steps back from both of them. Michelle pressed her hands to the sides of her head. "That's not what it looks like," she said quickly. The cat was sick. It was dying already. I was putting it out of its misery. I was doing it a favor. She kept talking, but the words fell apart. Then a voice spoke from behind the hay bales. No. The voice was soft, female, and close. Too close. It sounded like the person speaking was standing right next to my ear, even though I could not see anyone there. Michelle and Rich both went still. "That was you," the voice said. That was him. The speaker stepped out from the shadows. It was Kelsey. She wore blue jeans and a black sweater. Her face had none of the warmth from our date. No smile, no embarrassment, no playful spark in her eyes. She looked empty, not calm. Empty, the television changed again. A live symbol appeared at the bottom corner of the screen. Static rolled across the image, then cleared to show the three of us standing exactly where we were, in front of the hay bales, under the darkening sky. We were on screen. All of us. I looked from the live footage to Kelsey, then to Rich and Michelle. None of us knew how long we had been watched. Rich's hard expression cracked. Fear showed through. Michelle was close to crying again. Kelsey looked at them. "You pretend to be normal," she said. "Even now, you refuse to take responsibility. I suppose you think they are less than you." She folded her hands together and looked up toward the camera above us. There is much about the animal kingdom that humans do not understand, she said. The first thing is that humans are part of it. The second is that we are connected more deeply than shared food, shared land, or shared air. She lowered her hands. We feel. Her head jerked sharply to the left. Too sharply. The sound was awful, like her neck had snapped cleanly. Michelle gasped. Kelsey stayed standing that way, her head bent at an impossible angle. Eyes still open. That was enough for Michelle. She turned and ran into the dark field. Rich and I stood there for one stupid second, frozen like fools. Kelsey remained facing away from us. I was not on that television in any old video. She had shown Rich and Michelle doing things, but she had shown nothing of me. I did not do that kind of thing, I told myself. Not like that. Not recorded. Rich moved closer to me. I could tell we were thinking the same thing. Kelsey was strange, yes. Terrifying, yes. But she was still one woman. Maybe the two of us could overpower her. Maybe we could run together. Maybe we could take the camera, the television, anything useful. Then, Kelsey spoke again. When you are like me, she said, her voice changing slightly, you do not just see what they see in your dreams. Her shoulders began to move under her sweater, not like she was stretching, not like any normal body movement. Something rippled under the fabric. I feel their fear, she continued. I feel their helplessness. I feel their confusion when they do not understand why pain is happening to them. Her legs shook violently. Her body began to grow. The shape of her jeans changed as her legs bent and thickened. The fabric ripped, hanging from her body in strips. Her shoulders spread wider. Her back rose. They do not understand, she said. Her voice was no longer the sweet voice from dinner. It had become rough and deep, like metal scraping through a throat. But I do, one of her arms shot upward, cracking and twisting as it changed. The bones bent in ugly ways, folding and pushing outward to make room for something larger. A huge limb formed where her arm had been, thick and powerful, reaching into the air. Then came the fur. Silver hair spread across her body in a rush, covering her growing frame in seconds. It moved over her skin like a living wave. Her face pushed outward. Her mouth widened. Her teeth lengthened. Her body rose taller and taller until the woman from the date was gone, replaced by something massive. Rich ran. I did not notice the exact moment he left. 1 second he was near me. The next he was gone, fleeing into the dark. I should have done the same much sooner. I turned and ran. I ran faster than I had ever run in my life. I did not care about the burning in my lungs or the pain in my legs. My body could fall apart later. I just needed distance. I ran without knowing where I was going. The light from the television faded behind me, and soon the field became almost completely dark. I heard Rich scream somewhere behind me, or maybe off to one side. I did not stop. The scream cut off. I kept running. A thought pushed through my panic. Why was I here? Kelsey had videos of Rich and Michelle. She had proof of them doing horrible things, but she did not have any footage of me. I would never record it. That thought came so naturally that for half a second I did not understand what it meant. Then, I did. I kept running. They were just animals, I told myself. There was no way that thing knew about me. I was careful. I cleaned up well. I did not leave evidence. I did not make stupid videos. I did not brag. I did not get caught. The growl came from somewhere behind me. It was low and paced, not wild. It sounded controlled, like the thing was not tired at all. If anything, it was enjoying this. I pushed harder. My eyes had adjusted enough to make out shapes in the darkness. I looked back for a second and saw nothing behind me. That gave me one tiny piece of hope. Then I slammed into something in front of me. Michelle. We both hit the ground. For one confused second, I thought I had run into a wall. Then she groaned and shoved herself up. There was no time to ask questions. We got to our feet and started running together. "What is that?" she gasped. I can hear it moving, she was right. Heavy steps hit the ground behind us, sometimes close, sometimes farther away, like the beast was circling. Michelle ran beside me, barely keeping pace. "We can't stop," I said. "We have to." I never finished. Michelle vanished from beside me. She did not trip. She did not fall forward. She was yanked backward so fast that all I saw were her shoes kicking up into the air before the dark swallowed her. The thing had been right behind us. Maybe it had been there the whole time. Maybe it was playing with us. I didn't do anything. I screamed into the dark. The lie tore out of me without thought. Behind me, Michelle screamed. Then there were other sounds, wet sounds, tearing sounds. Sounds I tried not to understand. My feet stumbled, but I forced myself forward. I could not think about it happening to me. I just had to move. Soon, Michelle's screams stopped. Then there was only my breathing, only my steps, only the endless, dark field. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before. There was nowhere to hide, no trees close enough, no building, no car, no weapon. I was like an animal caught in the open, with a predator somewhere nearby and no hole to crawl into. Then I heard leaves crunch ahead of me. I stopped. A low groan came from the darkness in front of me. My blood went cold. The thing had gotten ahead of me somehow. It had moved around me without a sound, faster than anything that size should have been able to move. It stepped out of the shadows. Moonlight touched its body, and I finally saw it clearly. It towered over me. Huge, silver-furred, and powerful, with shoulders like a bear and the long, cruel shape of a wolf's head. Its mouth was wet. Its snout was dark with blood, and when it licked its lips, it only spread the blood farther across its face. It did not rush. That was the worst part. It took its time. I closed my eyes and prayed to a God I did not believe in. Any God, any power, anything that could hear me. Nothing answered. Then I felt its breath on my face. Hot, thick, rotten, it leaned close and sniffed me. I had not even realized I had wet myself until I opened my eyes and looked down. My pants were soaked, and it was dripping onto my shoes. Looking down showed me the beast's feet. They were huge, at least 3 times the size of mine, covered in weary fur and dark, tough skin. Dirt clung to them. Blood, too. I could not move. Fear had taken everything from me. The beast lowered its head and studied me. Its mouth opened wider, revealing rows of teeth made for tearing. Its jaws looked large enough to close around my head without effort. I wanted my heart to burst before it touched me. I wanted to faint. I wanted anything to happen other than what was about to happen. A long snarl rolled from its throat. It had decided. It lunged. There was no time to run. No time to beg. No time to explain that I had never been caught, that I had never recorded anything, that I had cleaned my car as well as I could, that I had covered the stains with floor mats, that I had fooled the woman at dinner, that I had fooled everyone. There was only the open mouth, only the teeth, only the dark, and then even that was gone. Story 3. She was given to me when I was 6 years old. I still remember the day clearly, even though most memories from that age feel soft and blurry now. It was my birthday. The living room had pink balloons tied to the chairs, a small cake on the table, and paper plates with cartoon flowers on them. My parents were smiling in that strange way adults smile when they are trying to make a moment feel perfect. I was too young to understand that kind of smile. I only knew there was a present sitting in front of me, wrapped in shiny paper and tied with a silver ribbon. When I tore the paper open, I found a doll inside. She was beautiful to me. She had pale skin, round cheeks, dark glass eyes, and long brown hair that fell over her shoulders in soft curls. She wore a white dress with tiny lace around the sleeves and a faded pink bow around her waist. Her shoes were black and shiny. Her mouth was painted in a small smile. Not too big, not too happy, just calm and patient, like she had been waiting for me. My mother told me her name was Gabriella. I repeated the name softly, holding the doll against my chest. Gabriella, at the time, I did not know why my mother's eyes filled with tears when I said it. I did not know why my father looked away and cleared his throat. I only knew they both hugged me too tightly afterward, and my mother whispered, "Now you'll always have each other." I thought it was a sweet thing to say. From that day on, Gabriella never left my side. I took her everywhere. I took her to the kitchen when I ate breakfast. I took her to the bathroom while I brushed my teeth. I took her to the backyard, to the grocery store, to my grandmother's house, and to bed every night, if my mother tried to wash her dress. I sat beside the laundry room, waiting until it was dry again. If anyone moved her from where I had placed her, I would cry until they gave her back. To everyone else, she was just a doll. To me, she was my best friend. I played with her for hours. I braided her hair with little ribbons. I wrapped her in blankets and pretended she was sick, then fed her invisible soup from a plastic spoon. I sat her at my tea parties and gave her the best cup. I even took her into the bathtub with me until my mother said the water would ruin her, and after that I would make Gabriella sit on the toilet seat and watch me while I splashed around. I talked to her constantly. I told her about my dreams. I told her what cartoons I liked. I told her when I was scared of thunder, or when a girl at school was mean to me, or when I wished I had a sister to play with. I would sit on my bed with Gabriella across from me and speak as if she could answer. Sometimes I would even move her head and make her reply in a soft voice. I had a big imagination. Every child does, but mine felt stronger than most. I did not just pretend Gabriella was alive. In my mind, I believed it. Not in a silly way. Not like a game. I truly felt there was something behind her glass eyes. Something that listened. Something that understood. When I was 6, that feeling made me happy. I thought I had a real friend. I used to wish with my whole heart that Gabriella could really move, really speak, really hug me back. I would hold her at night and whisper, "Please be real. Please be alive. Please don't ever leave me." I did not know that some wishes are heard by the wrong things. At first, it was subtle. Small things began to happen around the house, things so tiny that I could explain them away. I would leave Gabriella on my pillow, then come back and find her sitting on the rocking chair near the window. I would place her at the foot of my bed, then wake up with her lying beside my face, her cold cheek touching mine. I would set her down in the living room, go to the kitchen for a snack, and return to find her turned slightly toward me. Every time I told myself I was forgetting. Maybe I had moved her and did not remember. Maybe Mom had picked her up while cleaning. Maybe Dad had moved her as a joke. Children forget things all the time. That was what I told myself, and for a while, I believed it. But the strange things did not stop. They grew. I began to notice her head turning. It would never happen when I was looking directly at her. It was always slow, always just outside the center of my vision. I would sit on the floor playing with blocks while Gabriella sat against the wall. Out of the corner of my eye, I would see her face shift a little. I would look up fast, and she would be staring at me. At first, I blamed the wind. That was the easiest explanation. Maybe the window was open. Maybe the air moved her hair and made her head roll to the side. Maybe the floor shook when someone walked by. I said those things to myself again and again, even when the windows were closed, even when no one else was home, even when Gabriella's head turned in a way no loose doll head should have been able to turn. It became harder to ignore at night. I started waking up around the same time every night, usually just after 3 in the morning. The house would be silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that feels thick and unnatural, like the whole world is holding its breath. I would open my eyes and stare into the dark. Sometimes Gabriella would still be beside me. Sometimes she would not. One night, I woke up and found her standing at the foot of my bed. Standing, her little black shoes were planted on the blanket, and her dark eyes were fixed on my face. I remember being too scared to scream. I only stared at her, my hands gripping the sheet, my body frozen. Then she fell forward onto the bed, just like any normal doll would. The next morning, I told my parents. My father laughed gently and said I must have dreamed it. My mother kissed my forehead and told me I had watched too many scary movies with my cousins. They were not cruel about it. They were patient. They loved me. But they did not believe me. I tried to believe them instead. I tried to tell myself it had been a nightmare. Then, a few nights later, I woke up because I felt something looking at me. My room was dark, except for a thin line of moonlight coming through the curtains. I was lying on my back. The air felt cold. My mouth was dry. I did not know why I had opened my eyes, but I knew immediately that something was wrong. I looked up. Gabriella was on the ceiling. She was lying flat against it, her back pressed to the white surface above my bed, as if gravity did not matter to her at all. Her hair hung down around her face. Her arms were spread slightly. Her painted smile looked the same as always, but from that angle it seemed wider, deeper, almost hungry. She was facing down at me, watching me. That was not the wind. I screamed so loudly that my throat hurt for days. My parents came running. My father burst into the room first, turning on the light. Gabriella dropped from the ceiling and landed hard on my bed. I screamed again and threw myself into my mother's arms. I cried so hard I could barely breathe. I kept pointing at the doll and begging them to take her away. My mother held me and rocked me. My father picked up Gabriella and looked her over like he expected to find string or tape on her back. There was nothing. Of course there was nothing. I told him everything. I told him she moved when no one touched her. I told him her head turned. I told him she stood on my bed. I told him she had been on the ceiling, watching me sleep. The words came out fast and messy, because I was terrified they would stop listening before I finished. They looked worried, but not in the way I wanted. They were worried about me, not the doll. My father said I was having nightmares. My mother said maybe I was stressed. They said children my age sometimes had very strong imaginations. They said scary movies and ghost stories could make things feel real when they were not. My mother promised me Gabriella could not hurt me because Gabriella was only a doll. Only a doll. I hated those words. Later that day, my father took Gabriella away. He said he was doing it to help me feel better. I watched him carry her out to the backyard. He put her in a trash bag and dropped it into the garbage bin behind the house. I remember feeling relief and guilt at the same time. A part of me still loved her. A part of me felt like I had betrayed my best friend. For a week, things were quiet. I slept with the lights on. I avoided looking at the corner of my room where Gabriella used to sit. My parents acted like everything was getting better, and after a few days, I almost started to believe it. Maybe they were right. Maybe fear had made me see things. Maybe I really had dreamed the ceiling. Then, one morning, I walked into the living room and saw Gabriella sitting on the sofa. My whole body froze. She sat in the middle cushion, legs straight out, hands resting in her lap. Her hair was a little messy. Her dress was dirty, like it had been buried or dragged through mud. But her face was clean. Her glass eyes looked straight at me. I could not move. I stared into those eyes for longer than I should have. The room tilted. The last thing I remember was the sound of my mother calling my name before everything went black. When I woke up, I was in my bed. My parents were beside me, their faces full of concern. My mother had one hand on my forehead. My father stood near the door, pale and tense. I sat up too quickly. "Where is the doll?" I asked. My parents looked at each other. That look scared me more than any answer could have. My father said, "Honey, didn't you bring her back?" I shook my head slowly. "What?" He swallowed. "We thought you dug her out last night." My mother's voice was softer. "We saw you. You came in through the back door after midnight. You were carrying Gabriella. We thought you had gone outside and found her because you missed her." The room went silent. "I was asleep the whole night," I said. Neither of them answered. For the first time, I saw real fear in their faces. After that, no one pretended everything was normal. My father checked the backyard. The garbage had already been collected days before, but there was mud near the back fence, and a trail of dirty little marks led toward the house. They looked almost like footprints, but too small and too light to be mine. My mother cried in the kitchen while my father called someone. Maybe a priest, maybe a counselor, maybe both. I do not know. Adults always think phone calls can fix things. Gabriella was locked in a box and put in the garage. That night, the box was found open. Gabriella was sitting at the top of the stairs. The next morning, my parents rented a new apartment. They did not explain much to me. They said we needed a fresh start. They said the house had too many bad memories. They packed quickly, almost angrily, throwing clothes, dishes, books, and toys into boxes. My mother did not touch Gabriella. My father wrapped the doll in a blanket and locked her in the trunk of the car. I sat in the back seat during the drive, watching the old house disappear behind us. For the first time in weeks, hope sparked inside me. Maybe this was the answer. Maybe if we left the house, whatever was happening would stay there. Maybe Gabriella was only tied to that place. Maybe in a new apartment, with new walls and new windows and new rooms, I could forget all of it. The apartment was smaller than our house, but it felt bright when we arrived. The walls smelled like fresh paint. The floors were clean. My new bedroom had one window overlooking the parking lot and a closet with a sliding door. My mother tried to make it cheerful. She unpacked my blankets and set my books on a shelf. She asked if I wanted my stuffed animals on the bed. I asked where Gabriella was. My parents went quiet. My father said she was gone. I did not ask what that meant. That night, I slept in my new room with the door open and the hallway light on. My parents stayed awake late, talking in low voices in the living room. I could hear worry in their whispers, but I could not understand the words. Eventually, I fell asleep. Then I woke up outside. The air was cold. I was standing in the apartment parking lot in my pajamas, barefoot on the rough pavement. The building rose in front of me, dark except for a few glowing windows. I did not know how I had gotten there. My feet hurt from the cold ground. My hands shook. My breath came out in little white clouds. For a few seconds, I thought I was dreaming. Then the apartment door opened. Light spilled into the hallway upstairs. I looked up. A girl stepped into view inside our apartment. She looked exactly like me. Same hair, same face, same pajamas, same height, same everything. But she was holding Gabriella. My parents stood behind her. They were smiling, not forced smiles, not scared smiles, real smiles, warm smiles, happy smiles. My mother laughed at something the other girl said. My father placed a hand on her shoulder the way he used to do with me. They looked relieved, peaceful, almost joyful. I tried to scream. No sound came out. I ran toward the stairs, but my body felt wrong, like I was moving through water. I reached the door and slammed my hands against it. No one looked at me. My parents kept talking to the other girl. Gabriella's head rested against her chest, and the doll's glass eyes stared over her shoulder directly at me. "Mom," I screamed. "Nothing, Dad." Nothing. The girl who looked like me smiled down at Gabriella and brushed the doll's hair back with gentle fingers. I pounded harder on the door. "That is not me." I shouted. "That is not me," but it was like I was not really there, like I was only watching, like I had become the ghost outside the glass. The girl turned slightly, and for one terrible second, her eyes met mine through the doorway. She smiled. It was my smile, but it was not mine. Then, a baby's cry came from another room. Loud, sharp, newborn, the sound cut through me in a way I did not understand at first. My parents turned toward it with soft faces. The girl holding Gabriella walked toward the bedroom as if she belonged there, as if the cry was for her, as if she had always been the daughter inside the apartment and I had always been the thing outside. That was when I remembered something my parents had told me years before. Not all at once, but in broken pieces. I had been little, maybe 5 or 6, when my mother tried to explain it. She said that before I was born, I had not been alone. There had been another baby in her belly with me, a twin, a sister. But very early in the pregnancy, that baby had died. The doctors called it vanishing twin syndrome. My parents told me gently, like it was a sad story from long ago, not something that still lived inside our family. They said my sister had been too small to survive. They said they had already chosen a name. Gabriella the doll had not been a random birthday gift. It had been named after her, my twin sister. "So you can still be together," my mother had said when she gave it to me. I had not understood then. I thought she meant the doll was my friend. I thought Gabriella was supposed to keep me from feeling lonely. But maybe Gabriella had been waiting. Maybe she had been with me all along, watching from inside those glass eyes, learning my voice, my face, my movements, my place in the family. Maybe every year I held her. Every night I whispered to her. Every time I begged her to be real, I gave her more of myself. I had wanted a sister. I had wanted my doll to come alive. And now, she had. Inside the apartment, my parents stood around the girl who looked like me, and none of them looked afraid. None of them questioned why Gabriella was there. None of them saw me outside. I kept screaming until my throat burned. "That is not me. Please. Mom, please, look at me." But no one heard. The girl looked back one last time before the door closed. She held Gabriella in her arms, and the doll smiled. Story 4. I found this cabin about a week ago. I do not know who built it, who lived in it, or what happened to them, but I know they left in a hurry. The front door had been stuck when I first came upon it, swollen from rain and cold, but I was able to force my way inside after throwing my shoulder against it 3 times. When the door finally gave in, it slammed open so hard it hit the wall behind it. The inside looked like someone had torn the place apart before running. Books with ripped pages were scattered across the room. Some were open on the floor, their covers bent and their pages muddy from boot prints. Pots and pans had been pulled from the cabinets and thrown across the kitchen area. A closet near the back wall hung half open, with broken wooden hangers lying all over the floor like snapped bones. A few clothes were still there, but most of the useful ones were gone. Whoever had stayed here before me had not packed with care. They had grabbed what they could carry and left the rest behind. To most people, that would have been a bad sign. To me, it was perfect. By the time I found the cabin, I had been alone for days. I had lost the rest of my crew somewhere deeper in the mountains, and I did not know if they were dead, lost, or simply wise enough not to follow me anymore. I had been walking through wet woods and freezing air with barely any shelter. Each night had been worse than the one before it. The cold had started getting into my bones. My hands shook even when I tried to keep them still. My breath rattled in my chest. I knew winter was close, and once it truly arrived, anyone caught outside without shelter would not last long. So when I saw the cabin through the trees, I did not care why the last person had left. I cared that it had a roof. I cared that it had walls. I cared that there was a fireplace and enough supplies to keep me alive. For the first few days, I treated the place like a gift from God, or whatever power still watched these woods. Whoever had lived here before had left a good amount behind. There were jars of vegetables, dried meat, some flour, a little salt, and a few cans I could still eat if I was careful. There were blankets, old furs, a bed with a mattress that smelled musty but dry, and enough firewood stacked near the wall to get me through several nights. I told myself I would rest for only a day or two. Then I told myself one more day. Then, one more. A week passed. The longer I stayed, the more the forest changed around me. The cold came closer each day, like a living thing creeping in from the hills. The time I could spend outside grew shorter. In the morning, I could last a while if I kept moving. By late afternoon, the wind cut through my coat and shirt as if I were wearing nothing. At night, the trees cracked and groaned in the cold, and the cabin walls seemed too thin to keep the dark outside where it belonged. I knew I needed more firewood. I knew I needed heavier furs. I knew I had to prepare before the real snow came down and locked me in. But I was tired. Not the normal kind of tired a man feels after work. I mean the deep kind that settles behind your eyes and inside your bones. The kind that makes even simple tasks feel impossible. Yesterday was my birthday. I had no one to say it to, no one to celebrate with. No cake, no drink, no laughter, no hand on my shoulder, no familiar voice. So I decided to celebrate by myself. I told myself I deserved one good day in this frozen hell. I left the fire burning longer than I should have. I ate until my belly felt full for the first time in weeks. I pulled the blankets close, warmed my hands, and said out loud, "The lack of food and the shrinking pile of firewood can be tomorrow's problem. Today is my birthday, and this icy place is not taking that from me." That was yesterday. Now yesterday's pleasure has become today's punishment. The food I ate is gone. The firewood I burned is gone. The cold is still here, and now it feels stronger than before. This morning, I woke early and found a fresh layer of snow covering the clearing outside the cabin. Only a thin layer, but enough to hide the brown and green ground I had grown used to seeing. The whole world outside looked pale and quiet. The trees stood still under the gray sky, their branches holding snow like old hands holding ash. I dressed in everything I had. Coat, gloves, boots, scarf, furs, none of it felt like enough. The wind found every weak place and pushed through. It slipped under my collar and into my sleeves. It bit at my ears and nose. Within minutes of leaving the cabin, I was already sweating under my layers, and the sweat made the cold worse. It cooled against my skin until I felt wet inside my own clothes. The forest had changed overnight. The branches were darker, a deeper brown from the damp. Every twig I tried to break bent instead of snapping. Some twisted in my hands like wet rope. Others cracked halfway and then held on, refusing to give me anything dry enough to burn. The snow on the ground hid roots, rocks, and holes. Each step I took left a deep print behind me, proof that I was still alive and still moving, though I did not know how much longer that would matter. As the morning went on, the sun rose higher and pushed what little warmth it had into the snow. The top layer melted just enough to make everything worse. Snow turned to slush. Dirt turned to mud. Each step pulled me deeper. First my boots sank to the sole, then to the ankle, then, in some places, nearly to my shins. Every time I lifted a foot, the mud tried to keep it. It sucked at my boots with a wet sound that made me think of graves being opened. I knew I needed to find another path. If I kept moving through that soft ground, I would waste all my strength and come back with nothing but wet hands and a colder body. But the higher paths were no better. Where the snow was harder, anything useful was buried underneath it. Good twigs, dry bark, small branches, all hidden beneath snow and moisture. It would take a miracle to find anything out there worth burning. And then I found one. A bundle of sticks lay in the open. It was not buried. It was not wet. There was no snow on it, no frost, no mud, no moisture anywhere near it. Even from a distance, I could see that the wood was lighter than everything around it. Dry wood has a certain look in winter. It stands out like bone in dark dirt. I stopped walking. The bundle lay in a small, bare patch of ground surrounded by snow. The patch itself was dry, too. Not frozen, not muddy. Dry, that should not have been possible. The snow around it had risen almost to my shins. The trees were wet. The ground was wet. My gloves were wet. My coat was wet. Even my beard had frozen moisture in it. But there, in front of me, was a bundle of dry sticks, resting on dry dirt, as if winter had simply chosen not to touch that place. I moved closer. As I approached, the air seemed to change. The cold loosened its grip on me. The biting wind faded. I knelt just outside the bare patch and placed one gloved hand against the ground. Dry, after so many days of damp clothes, wet boots, and cold that never left my skin, touching something dry felt almost holy. A small mercy in the middle of an icy nightmare. I stared at the sticks, trying to understand. Then I saw the twine. The bundle was tied together. Not loosely, not by accident. Thick twine had been wrapped around the sticks 4 times. Someone had placed it there. The thought tightened around my throat. The forest seemed to grow heavier around me. The air felt dense, like it had hands. Goosebumps crawled down my back under all my layers. I went still, listening. The trees stood silent. The snow muffled the world. But I felt watched, not imagined. Watched. Something had left those sticks for someone to find. Maybe for me. I could feel it close by. I did not want to turn around because I was afraid of what I might see. My mouth went dry. My fingers tightened around the bundle. "Who's out there?" I called. My own voice startled me. I had not spoken aloud in days, maybe longer. Hearing it in the open forest made it sound weak and strange. My breath slowed, and I watched mist rise from my mouth into the cold air. No one answered. I did not know what else to do. Slowly, carefully, I picked up the bundle of sticks and held it close to my chest. I closed my eyes for a moment. I do not know why. Maybe I thought that if I could not see whatever was watching me, it could not see me either. Then I stood. When I turned back toward the trail I had taken, I felt the attention shift. It was no longer all around me. It was directly in front of me. I heard breathing, short, sharp inhales, long, slow exhales. The sound came from somewhere ahead, hidden between the trees. I could feel anger in it. Not animal anger. Not hunger. Something worse. Something personal. It felt like whatever stood there knew what I had done, and it had been waiting for the chance to make it right. My throat tightened. Words rose inside me, but they were not prayers. They were excuses. Old excuses. The same ones I had told myself again and again. I did what I had to do. I had no choice. It was him or me. No one would understand. No one could know. But I did not speak. Slowly, I opened my eyes. The clouds above had thickened. The evergreen trees rose around me like dark pillars, reaching into the gray sky. Snow stretched between them in wide white sheets. The breathing seemed to blend with the wind. For a second, I wondered if I had imagined it. Was there truly something there? Was I alone? Then I saw the mist. Not my breath. Not the wind. A pale cloud of breath came from the darkness between two trees. It appeared, faded, then appeared again. Something was standing there. I strained my eyes, but I could not see its body. Only the breath. Only the space where it should have been. Still, I knew what it was doing. Watching, studying, judging, I could not stay there. That feeling pulled up a memory I had worked hard to bury. A memory of warm autumn leaves, a river running through the mountains, Sam's laugh beside me, and the way his hand had brushed mine when no one was looking. I turned away before the memory could finish. The sun had already begun to dip toward the mountains. I had been out too long. I needed to get back to the cabin before dark. The sticks were dry, and that was all that mattered. I would make a fire. I would eat what little food remained. I would think about what came next only after the door was closed and locked behind me. I started back the way I had come. The trail no longer felt the same. The trees that had once held green and yellow seemed gray now. The frozen pools I passed looked like dead eyes staring up from the earth. The path twisted through the woods, but it felt changed, as if the forest had moved things while I was not looking. Cold, gray, death, and despair seemed to follow every step. I moved faster. The ground fought me. Mud grabbed at my boots and held tight. Each step took longer. It felt like the forest itself was trying to keep me there. Like the trees, the mud, and the snow were all witnesses to what I had done, and none of them wanted me to leave. Then my right leg sank almost to the knee. I fell forward, catching myself with one hand. The bundle of sticks nearly slipped from my grip. I cursed and pulled, but the mud held. I twisted, yanked, and used all my strength until my boot finally came free with a wet, sucking sound. That was when I saw the tracks. Fresh footprints in the snow ahead of me. They were not mine. They were leading toward the cabin. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. Thoughts rushed through my head, each worse than the last. Something had gone back there while I was in the woods. Something had followed my trail. Something had entered the place where I slept. Every sensible part of me told me not to go back. Run, it said. Keep going. Find another shelter. But the shadows were rising between the trees. The sun was sliding down toward the horizon. The cold was growing sharper by the minute. Out in the open, my furs would not be enough. Without the cabin, I would freeze. So I followed the tracks. I tried to step lightly, making as little sound as I could, though the snow crunched under my boots no matter how careful I was. I kept my eyes on the prints. They were deep and strange, shaped almost like a man's boots, but not quite right. Too long in some places, too narrow in others. They went straight to the cabin door. Then they stopped. I crouched near the entrance and looked around. No tracks led away. No prints circled the cabin. No marks led to the trees. Whoever or whatever had come here had gone inside and had not come out. I held my breath and opened the door. The cabin looked the way it had when I first found it. All the work I had done over the week was gone. I had cleaned the room. I had stacked supplies. I had put the books in a pile, hung the clothes, organized the pans, swept the floor, and made the place feel almost livable. Now, everything was ruined again. Books were thrown across the floor. Clothes had been torn into strips. Pots were dented so badly they were useless. The blankets had been dragged from the bed. The furs were scattered. A chair lay on its side near the fireplace. But the worst part was the smell. Food. I rushed to the drawer where I had kept my rations. It was empty. Everything was gone. Then I saw the floor. Vegetables, dried meat, fruit, flour, and the last of the supplies had been stomped into the floorboards. Not eaten. Not stolen. Destroyed, crushed underfoot until they became a filthy paste ground into the wood. It had left me with nothing. The sun was almost gone, and I had to get warm before the last light faded. I still had the bundle of sticks. It had to be enough. I knelt by the fireplace and unwrapped the twine. My hands stopped. The wood had changed. The sticks that had been light and dry in the forest were now dark. Their bark had turned cold and damp. When I touched one, moisture came away on my fingers. I struck my flint and tried to catch a spark. The spark hit the wood and died instantly. I tried again. And again. Nothing. The wood was wet. Everything had been for nothing. Wet, exhausted, cold, and hungry, I crawled into bed. I kept my coat and furs on, but they did not help much. My body shook violently under the blankets. I was so tired that my thoughts began to melt together, but the cold would not let me sleep fully. It held me at the edge, cruel and patient. As I lay there, half awake and half dreaming, I heard a gentle voice. Jeb. My eyes snapped open. The voice hit me like a blow. I knew it. I looked around the cabin, but at first I saw nothing. "What are you doing here?" the voice asked. My heart stopped. "Jeb, that isn't funny, Sam." I opened my eyes wider and saw him sitting at the edge of my bed. For a second, my heart betrayed me. It leapt toward him. It remembered before I could stop it. His smile, his hands, his laugh. The warmth of him beside me when the rest of the world felt far away. But his voice was wrong. His tone was flat. His rhythm was strange. It sounded like someone had practiced the words without knowing what they meant. "Where are you going?" he asked. The words were his, but not his. "Jebediah," he said. He sounded like he was learning my name as he spoke it. This could not be happening. Sam could not be here. Sam was gone. Sam was back in the woods. Sam was under snow and dirt and silence. "Come back to bed," he said. I reached toward him before I could stop myself. I wanted to touch his shoulder. I wanted to turn him around and see the face I had known. I wanted one impossible moment where the world forgave me. My hand touched him. His shoulder was too narrow. I turned him toward me. For only a moment I saw his face clearly. It was not Sam's face. Not exactly. The cheeks were too high. The nose was too long. The skin stretched too tightly over the bones beneath it. It wore Sam's shape the way a starving man might wear clothes taken from someone larger. "Sam?" I whispered. He stood. He walked to the door and left the cabin. From outside, deeper in the dark, I heard him repeat in a voice that had grown lower and closer to my own. "Come, to bed." I do not know how long I lay there after that. I tossed and turned, but I did not sleep. At some point, I must have drifted off because I woke again to a faint breeze touching my face. The cabin door was open a crack. Mist slipped through the gap, moving into the room in slow white streams. It seemed to rise and fall with my breath. I wanted to get up and close it. I needed to. The cold was pouring in. Snow slid across the floor near the entrance. The wind pierced through my coat and furs. I felt tiny needles in my throat and chest. My body begged me to cough, but fear kept me silent. Something inside me knew that if I stood and crossed the room, I might not make it back to the bed. Then the voice came again. Jeb. I closed my eyes. Come. Doing here, the words were broken now. What, are you going to? It spoke in pieces. Bits of old conversation stitched together with no true meaning. A voice made of stolen memories. Then it said something that made my blood turn cold. Why can't we stay out here forever? I had not heard those words since the start of the trip. Back then, the trees had been full of warm orange and deep red leaves. The rivers had run clear and fast through the mountains. Back then, I had not been alone. There had been a crew. There had been laughter. There had been Sam. There had been his hand in mine when the others were not looking. There had been a secret I thought I could carry. A secret I thought I could control. I want to, Sam, I whispered, though I do not know if I meant then or now. The thing outside continued. Do you think your wife will find out about us? Those words tore through me. I sprang out of bed, rage and fear pushing me forward. I did not deserve this. Not from the forest. Not from whatever wore his voice. I had done what I had to do. Sam had wanted too much. He had talked about going back and telling the truth. He had said he was tired of being hidden. He had said my wife deserved to know. He had said he loved me, and that was the worst thing he could have said, because love makes people careless. I had not meant for it to happen the way it did. Not at first. But he would not stop talking. He would not stop crying. He would not stop saying my name. I moved toward the door, anger giving warmth back to my limbs. Every step made the cold seem weaker. The closer I got, the more the truth twisted inside me. Did he think I could go home ruined? Did he think my life could survive what he wanted to say? Did he think I would choose him over everything I had built? I reached for the handle. That was when I saw him. Sam stood just outside the door, peering in through the crack. The butterflies I had once felt for him turned to maggots in my stomach. Now that he was closer, I could see how wrong he was. His body was stretched over something that did not fit. His shoulders sat at the wrong angles. His arms hung too long. His cloudy yellow eyes stared without blinking. His mouth opened slightly, and his breath rolled into the cabin carrying the rotten smell of death. But the most familiar part was his neck, bruised, striped with red and purple marks, the marks my hands had left. I grabbed the door and pushed with all my strength. The thing slammed against it from outside. It wailed in Sam's voice, then screamed in the voices of animals, birds, men, and things I had no name for. The door shook in its frame. You're hurting me, it cried. Then, in Sam's voice again, softer, broken, begging, it said, Jebediah, please tell me what's wrong. I pushed harder. The wood cracked. Pieces broke from the door as it forced its hand through. A cloudy yellow eye appeared in the gap, staring at me with hate and hunger. Long fingers reached for my face. In desperation, I grabbed a broken chunk of wood from the floor and drove it through the thing's hand. It screamed. The sound was so loud and terrible that my stomach cramped and my knees gave out. I fell to the floor, covering my ears, but it did no good. The scream rang inside my skull. It twisted through my bones. It sounded like Sam and like the forest, and like every animal that had ever died in winter. When the sound finally faded, I crawled back to the door and looked through the hole. I saw Sam running on all fours into the woods. No, not Sam. The thing that had borrowed him. It disappeared between the trees, moving fast over the snow, its limbs bending in ways no human body should bend. I know it will come back. I do not know if it is truly Sam. I do not know if the forest took him after I left him. I do not know if something found his body, learned his voice, and followed me here. I do not know if it wants justice, food, warmth, or only my fear. But I know I cannot stay. I would rather take my chances with the cold than wait for that thing to return after dark. I will use the morning to pack what little I can carry. I will take the furs, the knife, my flint, and whatever scraps remain. I am writing this down for anyone who finds this cabin after me. If you are reading this, please listen. Go back the way you came. Do not stay here. Do not take anything you find lying dry in the snow. Do not trust any voice that calls you from the trees. And if you see a man in the woods, no matter who he looks like, no matter how much you loved him, do not speak to him.